we go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the very first of our More About series. This particular episode is featured within the Small Business Expo in Small Business Month 2022. And I'm delighted to introduce you to our very first guest, Kellon Beard. Kellon Beard is the Regional Manager of Business New South Wales and has been in this role and working with businesses in the mid-north coast of New South Wales for some time now. Hi, Kellon.
G'day, Kerry. How are we?
Pretty good. How long have you been in your role for now, Kellon?
This is the 16th year.
16th year.
Yeah.
You must have seen some massive changes in the mid-north coast in that time. Do you want to share a few highlights?
Yes, we have seen some very massive changes. Probably the biggest one is the Pacific Highway and the difference that's made. Getting it rerouted around or out of most towns, and we're really glad to see it come out of Coffs Harbour.
I completely agree with you. Kellon, can you tell us a little bit about what Business New South Wales is and does, and how small businesses in particular can use the service?
Yeah, sure. Business New South Wales is a member-based organisation, so it's a non-for-profit. It is owned by the members. We're part of a much bigger organisation, New South Wales Business Chamber. So we have a number of arms now. We have Business Australia, Business New South Wales. We have our law firm, Australian Business Lawyers and Advisors. We have a workplace advice line unit. We have recruitment agencies and a whole number of other business units that we are there to support members. Membership to Business Australia is free, so people can sign up, become a member of Business Australia, get free access to our services. If they want additional services or particular products, they can purchase those, but initial membership is free to anyone that wants to join.
What kinds of things can Business New South Wales help small businesses with, in terms of what kind of advice and support?
Industrial relations advice, advice on awards, WHS, basically anything to do with business. So we have a range of services that we can offer. And we tailor that to our members' needs. So as the members' needs change, we change. Part of my role is to work with members to make sure their interests are progressed through to various governments. We lobby on behalf of members, and we've done quite a bit of that during the last couple of years, particularly with COVID.
Oh yeah, you sure have. What's your region, Kellon? What do you represent?
I represent the region from Foster, basically top of the Hunter to Woolgoolga. So I work with all the businesses there, particularly local chambers of commerce. We have a number of regional managers across New South Wales. So I work with the regional manager, Bob Hawes, in the Hunter, with Jane Laverty, the regional manager at Northern Rivers, who's got a lot on the plate at the moment with all the floods. So we work across the region to support business to make sure their interests are heard by government. We have a head office in North Sydney and quite an extensive network of resources.
That lobbying and advocacy role that you play for business is also really important. What kinds of things have you been advocating for in recent times?
In recent times, we've been advocating for changes to legislation in relation to COVID, in relation to grants and getting those out to businesses. An example most people probably weren't aware of, when all the legislation was coming out in the public health orders on the wearing of masks, there was one that came down that said you weren't allowed to work from an office at all. We picked up that was a mistake. That wasn't what the intention was. And so part of my role and the other regional managers was to bring all our local members and inform them of that issue. And when I did ring around the offices, they said, "I know it's a mistake. That's not, you're misreading it." And I said, "No, this is what came out last night. We know it's a mistake, but that's what the legislation says today. You need to get it changed." And it was changed overnight. And then again, when the mandate was lifted that you didn't have to wear a mask in the office, but it wasn't lifted if you worked in a factory or a warehouse. So it was another thing we went to bat on, because it didn't make a lot of sense with a warehouse or a factory, as most people know, have limited walls. They have plenty of airflow, but people still have to wear masks. So we went into bat for that.
It's really important. If somebody in the business community thought that something was unfair or unjust or needed to change, how would they work with you to advocate for something?
They can get in touch with me. My number is 0427 767 246, or they can email me at Kellon, KELLON .beard, BEARD, at businessnsw.com. I'm happy to take any of their issues forward. One of the things we're lobbying on at the moment is currently there is a clause in the Workers' Compensation Act that says if you get COVID, you've deemed to have caught it at work and therefore you can claim compensation. What we're lobbying for is that gets treated like anything else, that if you get COVID and you can prove that you got it through work, then you're entitled to workers' comp, but it doesn't automatically entitle you to claim workers' comp just because you caught it, which may have nothing to do with your work. So there's a number of things like that we advocate on the back of. Obviously, with all the flooding that's going on at the moment, we're doing a lot of work with government to make sure the payments are rolled out in a timely fashion. And where we see issues or concern, we report those back to the government.
Mm-hmm. And Kellon, what's your relationship with the smaller business chambers that are spread all throughout the region in our smaller communities?
I have a close working relationship with most of the chambers across my patch. I work closely with them on a number of issues. We have regular catch-up. We're having one next week to find out what their issues and concerns are at the moment. I pass on a lot of information I get to them to pass on to their members, particularly about things that we may be organising or running that are free for their members to attend. So I pass on as much of that information as I can get and make sure that they can provide that to their members. And we all work together for a better business environment.
Do you have chambers changed significantly in recent years in terms of what they do and how they're patriated?
Yeah, they have. They've changed a lot. I've been involved in the Port Macquarie Chamber now for a very long time, probably too long sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'm on their committee, but they have changed a lot. They've had to change because of the way businesses had to change, and they've had to adapt. And that's how we started back in 1826 as the Sydney Chamber of Commerce. So we've got a long history. We are a chamber, and we're there for business. So I'm happy to work with the local chambers right across the mid-north coast, and they all work very hard to support their local business community, and that's what we're here to help.
And a lot of the smaller ones appear to be quite under-resourced and really just running on whatever energy the volunteers can pull together, aren't they? What kind of support do you think they need from the broader community?
Oh, look, they need membership, so they need the business community to get behind them, to donate some time. One of the things I often talk to chambers about is how to get people onto their committee. And I tell them to be upfront, to go and ask people, say, can you commit a couple of hours a week? And then get them to use that time constructively to get other people involved, because the more people you've got on the committee, the more people you've got involved in the chamber, the less drag it is on a few.
Yeah, it's so true. I actually got a call yesterday from somebody who was representing a new business owner in the area, and the person didn't know anybody in the area. And they asked, well, where should they go so they can meet some other like-minded business people, which the chamber would be a good outlet, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and all the chambers run events, networking events that are low cost to members. And it's a great way to get involved in your local community and give back. And that's what it's all about.
Am I right in thinking, Kellon, that if someone, for example, was in the Nambucca or even in Wauchope, that they'd be very welcome to attend events with the bigger chambers as well? So that might be another way.
Yeah. All the chambers are happy to work together. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, but a number of years ago when Rob Oakeshott was our state member, we took 14 chambers of commerce to Parliament House to lobby the government of the day to get the Pacific Highway started.
Wow.
So it is certainly something, these people volunteer their time. They don't get paid for it. So if you can do anything to help them, I'd encourage you to do it because it's certainly worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I know for anybody that's listening to the recording of this, certainly in our role, if I'm ever needing to connect with a business or types of businesses, Kellon's the first person that I pick up the phone to call because he's so well connected with the businesses across the region. And Kellon, you must spend a lot of time in your car driving through the region.
Yeah, I do. I spend an enormous amount of time travelling around, meeting with businesses, finding out what their concerns are, trying to assist them, put them in touch with other people like yourself, Kerry. So we work together quite closely. But just, trying to do whatever I can to help business.
Yeah. Kellon, you have a significant amount of time in business development that other people really should be learning from as well. You've obviously had time to build a lot of the relationships that you have, but if somebody was just starting in a role like yours, what would you tell them to do so they can start to meet the businesses and gain their trust?
Well, one of the things that I always try and do and be considerate of, especially when we're trying to reach out to people, is the one-to-many approach. So look for people that have contact like myself, and there's a number of people in similar roles around the place that have contacts with a number of other people and use their networks to build.
Yeah.
And chambers, again, is a good way to do that because they bring in a lot of people and usually someone there will know someone that can help you out. So if they can't help you themselves, they will know someone that can. They can put you in touch with them.
Which reminds me to ask you another question. What are your thoughts on people who say you need to keep your contacts or your IP or your, your business knowledge close to your chest and not share it?
Yeah, no. Look, some things obviously you want to keep close, proprietary items, but most of the information or the issues that you're facing, someone has faced in the past, and they've found a way around it. And by sharing that knowledge, you learn from others, and you might learn a better way than the way you've addressed it. And that's what it's all about. It's about sharing knowledge and learning from each other.
I so agree. Was it Rob Oakeshott that coined the phrase collaboration, working together even if you're in competition?
Yeah, and that's right. At times we compete with each other, but other times we can learn from each other and help each other out.
Yeah. And speaking of that, on a regional basis, we talk a lot, Kellon, about how can we promote our region as a whole. What types of things do you think the business community can do to help? We might have a visitor come in from Sydney and they might not know the difference between Coffs Harbour and Port Macquarie and Kempsey because they're just having a visitor's experience. So what types of things do you think businesses can do to work together across a whole region?
I think one of the things that we're working with Mid-Coast Chamber at the moment is Bigger Backyard, and that's looking at spending money locally. And I think that's one of the big things that businesses can do, is look to where they spend their money and look at what they are spending out of the region and what resources they could use that money to buy within the region. And that's one of the things we're doing with Bigger Backyard in Mid-Coast LGA. We're getting businesses to pledge to look at their business, look at their expenditure, find out what they're spending out of the region and bring them back in. And I think that's something we could all do a lot more of to help build the region. Because at times we worry too much about competing, Coffs against Port. We hate each other and that's just bred into us, but you've got to get over it. We do compete on some things, but other things we could work together on to make it a much better environment for everyone.
Yeah, I agree, because in the end, we all benefit, don't we? And when we look at workforce and workforce shortages, that could be something to think about with staff as well in some cases. Yeah,
because part of the issue we've got, as we're trying to attract people here. But when people move here with certain skills that we require, they usually bring a partner. And what does the partner do?
Mhm.
And then, of course, we get into the issue about where do they live and how do they get to work and back and where do the kids go to school. And it creates a whole lot of issues that we can resolve, but we need to work together to resolve them.
Well, let's talk about that where do they live question. We have a housing crisis in the mid-north coast at the moment. Do you see any way out of it, Kellon? What might it be?
I don't think there's any easy answer, obviously, because if there was, we'd already have it. But I think it needs planning and needs consideration. Yeah, again, I don't think there's an easy answer, but it's something we can't just ignore. We need to work on it because we're having incredible skill shortages, and that's contributing to it because people are, and I've heard of these, applied for a job, got the job, couldn't find anywhere to live, so I had to turn the job down.
Yeah.
So we need to work together to resolve it.
We're hearing those stories too, and I guess one's mind might go towards, well, is it a lower income a family earning a lower income that's impacting? But we're hearing of it impacting doctors as well. It really is a crisis, housing.
Yeah, it is, and we've heard of businesses that have bought housing for their staff. And that's probably one way that business can look at it, but it's a limited effect. We need a whole of government approach to this, and we need to work at all levels of government to work out long-term strategy. We've got big issues. We've got supply issues. We've got rebuilding northern rivers. Things like that have been damaged from the floods. There's real issues going forward. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better.
It's scary, isn't it? We've had so many disasters, natural disasters, and then, of course, COVID in the last few years. What are you seeing that is really different now in the business community as opposed to, 3 years ago before we knew all of this was going to unfold?
I think the biggest changes that I've seen is businesses' ability to adapt and move.
Yeah.
Thank
you for not saying pivot, by the way.
Yeah, but a word we hadn't really heard of before. But you look at the way businesses adapt, and if you went back 3 or 5 years and said, I want to work from home, your boss would just laugh at you. You're dreaming. Now they're encouraging you to do it. They have changed the way they look at things, the way they look at their workers, and the way they invest in them, and looking at ways they can future-proof their business. And that's something we all need to consider. We've had a lot of natural disasters. We've had a lot of disasters. We'll have more, but it's how we react to those and the planning we need to put in place to make sure we can stay ahead of the game and stay resilient.
Do you think people's general sense of mental health is, are people well at the moment? Are they buoyant, or are they fatigued?
Oh, look, I think we're all fatigued, but I think we're a very resilient group of people, particularly here on the coast. We've had the floods, the fires, COVID, now the floods again. We've had it before, we'll have it again. We will rebuild, we will continue to improve, and as long as we keep doing that. But if you do need help, please reach out. There is plenty of help available. And that's one of the things I've told people all through COVID and the floods. Don't self-assess. Reach out, let someone else help you with the decision. It's not something you have to make on your own, and ask for help.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? And again, I know you've been really helpful sending me lots of different links that we can then distribute onto the community during hard times. I think some people can sometimes think, oh, I don't want to bother that person, or they're not going to know, or where can I go to? So to your point, go to somebody that has a lot of contacts, and if they don't know, they'll find somebody that does. Yeah.
And that's what I found initially with the floods. There was a lot of information out there. Sometimes it was hard to assess where you sort of fit it in.
Yeah.
But instead of you spending the time, we've got people on the ground at Service New South Wales that are there employed to do that for you. So just talk to them, let them make the decision for you, give them all the information they need, and they'll come back to you with a solution.
Yeah, so don't self-assess and don't necessarily be too proud to accept that support either. Because we did see a lot of that, didn't we, in our region, people not wanting to access support for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, we did. And it's not something they should be worried or concerned about. I mean, the government is there to assist business, and that's what we pay our tax dollars for. And they were doing the best they could at the time. So use that resource. The money's there, you paid your taxes, get some of it back. I was talking to a business last Friday that said it was a relatively new owners of a business. They went through a period where they had to restructure the business a bit. So had some staff, when they took over the business, they weren't entirely happy with, so they had to go through that, which was a normal process. And then building the business up, and then COVID hit, and they said, the job saver, JobKeeper was the thing that kept them going. And that's, again, things where we're lobbying in the background for, to provide to business, to make sure that they're available, that they're easy to apply for. They didn't get tied up in paperwork, and the government did a good job in stepping up and just putting the money out there. So.
Yeah, so that money could be in the economy as well.
Yeah.
So Kellon, let's talk about skills. Maybe if we could start, if you don't mind, just talking about your skills. So one might presume to have a role like yours, you went straight to university out of school, did well on your HSC, and then here you are in this very important position. Was that your career path?
Yeah, unfortunately not. I finished, what it was back then was year 10, fourth form back then. Yeah, I'm a bit older than year 10. But I was told by a career guidance counsellor that my grades weren't good enough to go on to year 11 and 12. And to get a trade, but probably bricklaying or plastering would suit me because of my abilities. So they said electrical was too hard. So I got an apprenticeship as an electrician. And that I did my trade, went to Sydney, did a lot of TAFE, worked at TAFE in Sydney. Spent a lot of time doing different courses, and eventually went to uni as a mature age student, and I've done a couple of degrees since. But yeah, nothing like it. It's been totally different. I gave a presentation to a school the other day, and they said, "How did you get into this career?" And I said, "Well, I think I've had like 14 or 15 different careers that have been totally poles apart." So yeah, I don't think there's any direct route to something. It's usually people come in from and a lot of it, my counterparts are the same. They've come in from different areas, and I think that's one of the advantages we bring to the role. We have different skill sets and different backgrounds.
Do you think that broader life experience and world experience makes you better at the job that you have now too?
Yeah, definitely. I was saying the other day, I think a lot of my decision making is based on what I learnt in the trade as an electrician, because when something's not working, there's a pretty clear path you follow to work out why it's not working. And I think I use that logic a lot of the time to solve problems that I face in business and for businesses that face things. I was talking to a business owner the other day. He was giving a presentation, and he was talking to school students, and then he was talking about his issues with getting people to apply for jobs. One in three people don't turn up for interviews. 1 in 3 people don't come back to him. 1 in 3 people don't last the induction. And I suggested to him, I said, "Do you ever go into schools and talk to them?" Because he runs Jack and Co. And he said, "No." I said, "Well, I would." He said, "But I'm thinking, I might do it." I said, "Yeah, well, to me, it'd be a good way for you to recruit staff, because you're talking to students and say, look, you might want a career in this industry, but if you go off to uni locally, we do have stores here, we can employ you, you could work part-time." And he thought that was a good idea. So yeah, again, to me, it was a logical conclusion, because he's looking for a pool of staff to join his business, and he's got a captive audience in a school.
I couldn't agree with you more. And as long as careers advisors are going to be under-resourced as they currently are by the Department of Education, I think it's going to be up to the business community to be knocking on the doors of the schools to get the future employees.
Yeah. And I think the days of, you've got to get through to the students that, like me, what you do as your first job or second job or third job may not be the job that you end up doing for a long time. I mean, I've been in this role pretty much longer than any other role, but I've had totally different roles. I mean, I started as an electrician. I've worked in purchasing for the state government. I've been in admin. I've been an HR manager, run recruitment agencies. I've done a lot of different things. So
it's not always a straight line, is it?
It's not always a straight line, but I'm very big on transferable skills and looking at what skills people bring and how you can use those, particularly in business. You're looking for people that aren't the same as you.
Yeah.
You don't want a bunch of clones. You want people that think differently, that can open up new avenues for you and new ways of doing things.
Yeah, so true. If somebody that's listening to this knows someone that's considering a career change or is looking for their first job even, how do you think they could advise that person?
Oh, look for something you like doing.
Yeah.
When I got into purchasing, it was buying electrical equipment. And then I was lucky enough to get into buying computers before they really took off. But I've always loved what I've done.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing. I love what I do now. I love helping business.
Yeah.
I love working with all the businesses across the Mid-North Coast.
Yeah. Helping
them solve issues and address concerns. And I think if you can find something you love, as they say, you'll never work a day in your life.
I so agree. I really agree with you. And I have worked with people through my earlier career when I was supporting people who are either unemployed or in the education environment, adult education, who had such a bad experience at school that they just can't vision themselves being successful at anything at all. And you mentioned the horrible things that your careers advisor had said to you, and I'm not saying that careers advisors are bad for 1 second, but there is, and I had that teacher at school too that was niggling me all the time, and it can take a lot as a young person to rise up through that, to become an adult that's confident enough to take a step.
Oh yeah, and look, the career advisor was probably right. My grades weren't that great, and I probably wasn't doing as well as what I could. But I knew I had the ability to do good. It took me a little while to find my feet. When I got the apprenticeship as an electrician, I mean that was sort of life changing because it was something I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
But then when I started working for TAFE in Sydney, things changed too, and particularly when I got into purchasing, because I was going to the same place every day, doing the same thing, sitting at the same desk. And that was totally different to what I was used to. Even working as an electrician at Sydney TAFE, I was on different equipment every day. But you have, and I'll share something with you on that. When I went for the interview at TAFE, I got interviewed. They said, ring up that afternoon to see how you went. So I rang up, and they said, look, as far as we're concerned, you've got the job. And I said, that's great. What job have I got? They said, well, what job did you apply for? I said, well, I applied for a job as a trainee tech teacher in electrical. And they said, oh, no, you're just out of your trade. We interviewed you as a maintenance electrician. I said, yeah, I thought it was a bit strange. Tech teacher. But as I said, look, if you want to be a tech teacher, there's no better place to learn and to work than Sydney TAFE. So I took on the job. But part of the interview for that job was, have you ever worked on motors? And I said, oh, yeah, I've worked on motors. And he said, well, how long have you worked on them? I said, well, when you work in the bush, like in Fort Macquarie, I said, you don't get to work on anything for any period of time. You just work on it as it comes up.
Yeah.
I never worked on a motor in my life. but I knew I had the confidence to be able to do it. I could learn quickly and fix it. So when I got the job, of course, that's a lot of the time was spent working on motors, but I quickly learned how to fix them. And, after about 6 months, I was teaching other people how to do it. So
Yeah.
you've got to trust in yourself sometimes and have trust enough that you know what you're good at and what you're not.
Yeah.
And what you can pick up and what you can learn. So.
They say that flexibility you're talking about and adaptability are 21st century learning skills, and among the most important skills that employers will have will demand into the future. However, do you nurture somebody to have those skills?
Look, you build on what they've got. You build on their confidence. You know what you can do. I mean, as I said, I got into purchasing. When I started in that, there was 6 people in the section. We had one guy buying computers and typewriters. When I left what was then government supply, we had about 15 guys buying computers and no one buying typewriters.
Yeah.
So we got involved when computers were basically, the PC was first invented, come on the market. So that expanded rapidly. So none of us really knew much about them, but we all learned. We all had the ability to pick things up and the willingness to do it. And I think that's what you got to look for, that willingness to learn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when we look across the mid-north coast and the people shortages that we have in different industries, I wonder quite often, how are we ever going to remedy this? We've got aged care that isn't attracting enough people, hospitality, the abattoirs, etc. They all are crying out for staff. Do you have any ideas around what needs to happen in those areas?
Well, I think people need to highlight the career opportunities that are there. We had a meeting recently with Melting Beef from Warhat. They're looking to recruit staff. And Jody, the managing director, talked about some of the staff, like the HR manager and that started on the floor. Akuba is another one where they've had people that have worked there for 20, 30 years and worked their way up through the organisation. The job you have today mightn't be the job you're going to have in 5 years' time, or it mightn't be where you want to be, but you need to look at, what can I learn from this role? What can I take out of it? What can I give to it that's going to make me more suitable for the next career move I want to make? And that's what I've always done.
That's a really fair point, Kellon. I don't know that people, maybe they're seeing that entry-level position, but not where it can launch them off to.
Yeah. As I said, when I started in purchasing, it was buying electrical. And then that took me into computers, and that sort of set me up for the rest of my career and ended up where I am today. But it was having that opportunity and having I suppose, the belief in myself that I knew what I was capable of doing, and trusting in yourself, and always looking at the transferable skills. As I said before, I've always looked at that. What can you take from one job and apply to another role?
Yeah. And in terms of how Business New South Wales supports employers with staff, I know we've used the service and we're members of the legal service as well quite a lot in how can employers use that advice line? So let's say they take a chance on a new employee, but they're a bit worried that they won't work out. That advice line's there to support them with that, isn't it?
It is. The advice line's been there. It's been part of us for a very long time. It's staffed by tertiary qualified industrial relations specialists. Some do have law degrees, but they've all worked in industrial relations for a long time, so they understand the award system. They understand what you can and can't do and the right way to do things. And if you do get stuck, they can put you through to a lawyer, and you can speak to an industrial relations lawyer free of charge as well. And that's one of the great advantages of being in this organisation and why I've been with it for so long, because I was a member and I did use their services before I started working for them. So I had a really good appreciation, again, of what they did. And that's why I suppose I like it so much, because I believe in what they do. And I've seen the benefit that they can provide and the benefit they can provide to business to help them out. Because most business owners don't understand this sort of stuff. It's over them. It's not something they want to get involved with. It doesn't earn them a dollar. But then they've got a partner in their corner that can help them out and can take all that load off them.
That's so valuable. As you and I know, 69% of businesses in our region don't employ anybody. So that is, do you think fear is a contributing factor to that?
Yeah, fear of the unknown, concern that when they bring someone on, they're going to bring their issues with them and how to deal with that. But there's also a lot of benefit. I mean, in a previous role I had where I was a HR manager, I interviewed someone for a call centre. And when I rang them back, I said, look, I just want to inform you, you've been successful with the role. And they said, yeah, we've thought about it, but we don't really want the role now. I said, that's fine. What role do you want?
Yeah.
She said, what do you mean? I said, well, I want you.
Yeah.
What role do you want?
Fabulous.
We're big enough, I'll find you something to do. And she was with the organisation for probably 20 years.
Wow.
But a really good person. And that's what people have got to look at. You can't grow your business that much if you don't employ people. You need systems in place, good systems, and that starts with good recruitment. But you've got to recruit the right people. And if you need help with that, we can give you that help. I recently recruited for a position for a non-for-profit. And it is interesting because one of the candidates we interviewed was doing really well. And then I just asked them a simple question, what made you apply for this role? And then they started moving in the chair and they got all awkward and uncomfortable. And I thought, there's something wrong here. But that comes from years of interviewing people, understanding what to look for. And a lot of business people don't have that. But it starts recruiting properly, understanding what you want the person to do, what skills you're looking for, but then also looking beyond having a set criteria where that person has to come from the industry, that person has to have grown up in it, that person has to have previous experience. And that's not always what you need. Sometimes you need fresh eyes. And the person we ended up for the role for non-for-profit has worked for non-for-profits before, but not in this industry. He's had nothing to do with it before, but is doing a wonderful job. And sometimes, as I said, you just need that fresh pair of eyes to help you look beyond what you're seeing.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And the laws that encapsulate employment in our country and in our state are just so confusing for employers. I can see why people can sometimes avoid bringing people into their business. But you're right, there is no growth. But it's not only necessarily about growth. I see and have been a small business owner that has just worked too hard because it seemed too hard to put on staff, where maybe it doesn't have to be that hard.
No, it doesn't have to be that hard. There is ways to do it easily. There's plenty of advice and assistance out there. We have a number of recruitment agencies we work with regularly. They have people on their books as well. So there's plenty of people out there looking for work. It's just knowing how to ensure that you get the right people for what you want to do.
Yeah.
And if you've got any concerns, or I can be of assistance, more than happy to help people.
Thanks, Kellon. That's awesome. It would be remiss of me as well to not mention school-based traineeships, which I think is something that we really need to get more of in the business community as well. So kids, when I grew up here in the mid-north coast, it was pretty much a no-brainer that we'd leave and go away. But while going away is great for us to grow as human beings, it's not as necessary as it was all that time ago now. So we could see kids staying more often than not.
Oh, yeah. And that's something that, we just didn't have the resources here. When I went to TAFE as an apprentice electrician, I went on 2 train carriages to Warhope that were converted to classrooms. We had one teacher teaching all 3 stages together, 3 days every 3 weeks. And he went to Kempsey and Taree on the train. So I mean, things have certainly moved on since then. We've got universities here, we've got wonderful TAFE systems, we've got great schools. The school I went to, St Joseph's Regional, had 105 students in it.
Yeah.
Had one class of year 10. I mean, it's totally changed now.
Yeah.
Skill-based trainees and apprenticeships and work experience are great opportunities for the young people of today to try things and learn.
Yeah.
And it's not always about time of year. I mean, as I said, I've done a couple of degrees, but it was a long time later. I did a lot of TAFE. I did a lot of learning on the job, and that certainly stood me in good stead.
Mm. Well, one more question as we're wrapping up now, Kellon. If you can, I mean, we've had a lot of disaster in previous years, and as you said, we're a resilient region, and we just keep rising up to the challenges. What really positive things do you see coming towards the Mid-North Coast, in particular in the business community, in our future?
I think there's a lot of positive things coming. We've got a great future. We've got a great region. We've got good infrastructure. We've got really good businesses, and we've got a lot of good talent that's relocating here from city areas. So I think what we need to do is, and we've got new councils, so we need to work together to promote the area as a whole. And that's something that I know I've been talking to you about for a long time. I think now's probably the best opportunity we've got to take that forward.
Yeah, we're really in a box seat, aren't we? It's a beautiful region. It's clean here. It is affordable as compared to Sydney, even though, you know, we might have the housing challenges or the supply challenges, etc. But it really is something that can be worked on and developed upon. Yeah,
we've got good universities. I mean, we've got Charles Sturt University is going to have its biggest campus on the Mid-North Coast. Great facilities. We've got good TAFEs. We've got, I think the future's looking very bright for us here. And as you said, we've got natural attractions, we've got lovely oceans and rivers. So it's all looking good for the future.
I so agree. Kellon, I've really enjoyed this chat. Thank you so much. It's nice for us to have time to have a conversation for 45 minutes.
Appreciate it, Kerry. Really appreciate it.
So could you just share again your website, phone number, email address?
Yep. So the website you can go to if you want to join, which is, as I said, is free. It's just businessaustralia.com. My email address is Kellon, Kellon, Beard, at businessnsw.com. And my mobile, if anyone wants it, is 0427 767 246. And we have an office in Port Macquarie in Gordon Street. But if you put Kellon into Google, you'll come up with me quite easily. And more than happy to help anyone that needs assistance.
That's so great, Kellon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kerry.
So the More About series has been designed to enable you to learn a lot more about all of the services that are here to support you and your business in the Mid-North Coast. You can listen to these recorded via the RDA Mid-North Coast website, which is rdamnc.org.au. And if you are in a service or would like to source some information, please do get in touch with us so that we can make sure you've got the info that you need. Thanks again, Kellon, and we'll be back again soon.
Thanks, Kerry.